Sometimes the bravest man in Westeros is not the one who swings the sword, but the one who refuses to bend. Episode 5 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms proves that honor is not a shining shield. It is a heavy burden, and in this world, carrying that burden can cost you everything. This episode opens with quiet tension hanging in the air. After the events of episode 4, nothing feels stable anymore. The court is uneasy. The small folk are whispering, and every knight seems to be measuring every other knight with careful eyes. No one speaks openly about fear, but it is there. You can feel it in the way conversations stop when certain names are mentioned. The political ground beneath everyone's feet is shifting. And episode 5 makes that clear from the very first moments. The powerful men at court are no longer pretending to trust each other. Smiles are thinner. Promises sound rehearsed. Every word feels like it has a hidden meaning behind it. At the center of this storm stands our knight, who once believed that doing the right thing would always lead to the right outcome. But in this episode, he begins to understand that honor does not protect you from politics. In fact, it makes you vulnerable, while others play games with alliances and secret deals. He continues to speak plainly that honesty, which once earned respect, now draws suspicion. Some see him as a threat, others see him as a tool. No one sees him as safe. This is the first big shift of episode 5. The realization that being good is not the same as being protected. The court scenes are especially important here. The way the lords look at each other says more than their dialogue. When one lord praises loyalty, another avoids eye contact. When someone speaks about justice, a quiet laugh can be heard in the background. These small moments show that the idea of knighthood is slowly breaking apart. Once knights were symbols of courage and fairness. Now they are chess pieces, and our central knight begins to notice this. He is not foolish. He sees the change, but he still struggles with the choice. Should he adapt? Or should he stay true to himself? This episode also shows how power moves quietly. No large battles happen at the start. Instead, power shifts in whispers, a private meeting behind closed doors, a servant delivering a message at night, a sudden change in who sits closest to the throne. These details may seem small, but they carry weight. By the middle of the episode, it becomes clear that alliances are forming without our knight being included. That exclusion is not an accident. It is strategy. Powerful men do not like unpredictability, and a knight who follows his own moral code is hard to control. One of the most powerful moments in this section is when our knight is offered a simple choice disguised as kindness. He is told that he can avoid trouble if he agrees to stay silent about something he witnessed. The offer sounds reasonable. It even sounds helpful. But beneath the surface, it is a test. If he accepts, he keeps his safety but loses a piece of his honor. If he refuses, he keeps his honor but gains enemies. The scene is quiet, but the weight of it is huge. You can see the conflict in his eyes. He understands the cost either way. What makes this episode strong is how personal it feels. The conflict is not just about kings and power. It is about identity. Who is he if he gives up what he believes in? And who will he become if he does not? This struggle reflects the larger theme of the episode. In Westeros, survival often demands compromise, but some men are built in a way that makes compromise feel like betrayal. By the end of this first part of episode 5, the lines are drawn more clearly than before. The political world is tightening around our knight. Friends are quieter, enemies are bolder. And the idea that honor alone can guide him safely through this world is beginning to crack. The episode does not rush this change. It lets it breathe. It shows how pressure builds slowly, how trust fades step by step, and how a single honest man can suddenly find himself standing alone in a room full of smiling faces. As the episode progresses, the true nature of power in Westeros begins to unfold. This is not about who has the sharpest sword or the loudest voice. It's about who knows how to manipulate words, gestures, and timing. Episode 5 carefully shows us that the court is not a place for straightforward actions. Every handshake, every polite bow, every congratulatory remark carries hidden meaning. Some lords speak openly about loyalty, yet behind closed doors, they plot betrayal. Others pretend to be allies, while quietly testing how far each knight will go for honor. The tension is almost tangible, and the way the camera lingers on subtle reactions emphasizes that nothing is accidental. Every glance, every pause, and every slightly raised eyebrow can shift power in an instant. One of the most interesting things in this episode is how alliances begin to fracture. Certain families that once appeared united now show cracks, and even minor disagreements hint at larger unrest. The episode uses small council meetings to highlight this. When advisors speak, their words are carefully chosen. They test each other with seemingly innocent questions, and they measure responses for hidden meanings. Our knight observes these shifts silently, but they are not lost on him. He begins to understand that loyalty in Westeros is transactional. Even men who claim to value honor may act against it if it benefits them. These subtle political maneuvers are far more dangerous than open combat because they move unseen, undermining people before anyone realizes what has happened. The episode also draws attention to how influence works through perception. A lord may have little real power, but if others believe he has sway, he can shape decisions indirectly. This is shown in scenes where seemingly minor characters comment quietly, and suddenly, the direction of a conversation changes. The placement of people in the room matters. The timing of laughter or applause, and the decision of whom to include in private discussions all shift the balance. Episode 5 cleverly emphasizes that politics is theater. Actions are calculated, and appearances are often more important than truth. In this environment, our knight is an anomaly because he acts based on principle, not performance. That principle makes him stand out, and standing out in Westeros is dangerous. Another key point is how secrecy and information dominate power structures. Messages are delivered at odd hours. Eyes watch every movement, and whispers carry farther than swords. The episode shows how information flows selectively. Those who control what others know can manipulate entire outcomes without ever raising a hand in battle. This is evident in a scene where a small slip of conversation changes how a group perceives a recent event. The scene is quiet, almost mundane, yet it has far-reaching consequences. Our knight begins to notice that the real battles are fought not with steel, but with strategy, cunning, and timing. By the middle of the episode, the court begins to feel like a minefield. Trust is rare, and suspicion is constant. Characters who appeared friendly in previous episodes now seem distant or calculating. Every interaction has stakes, and the audience begins to see how fragile relationships are. Even allies may hesitate to act decisively, because any misstep could shift favor or incite retaliation. The episode's pacing in these scenes is deliberate, letting tension build slowly. We see the danger of misjudgment, and we feel the pressure on our knight as he navigates this shifting landscape. Finally, episode 5 shows that in Westeros, survival is often about adaptability. The political shifts are subtle but relentless. No one can rely on old alliances or past promises. Even the most honorable individuals must recognize when the rules have changed. Our knight is forced to reconcile his sense of duty with the reality of a world where intentions are rarely pure, and where those who act without calculation risk everything. The episode lays the groundwork for the decisions and confrontations that will dominate the second half. And it becomes clear that the battle for power is no longer external, it is a test of perception, patience, and understanding who truly holds influence behind closed doors. In episode 5, the central knight begins to feel the weight of his choices more than ever. From the start of the season, we've seen him act with integrity, putting honor above convenience, and that code has defined him. But in this episode, it becomes painfully clear that honor is not always rewarded. The court's whispers, the calculated gestures of other lords, and the quiet exclusion from critical discussions force him to confront a difficult truth. In Westeros, being righteous does not guarantee safety or respect. Each scene shows how his moral compass is both his strength and his vulnerability. The episode opens with him observing the subtle power plays around him, quietly analyzing the motives of those who speak. Unlike others, he does not speak to manipulate. He speaks to clarify or to do what is right. This approach isolates him. He notices how some knights and lords make decisions based not on what is just, but on what will protect their own position. When a promise is broken or a secret is revealed, the central knight's reactions are deliberate but restrained. He does not react with anger or panic, but with careful consideration. This shows a growing maturity. He understands that impulsive actions may endanger not just himself, but those around him. One of the defining moments in this episode is a private confrontation where the knight is subtly challenged by a powerful lord. The conversation is tense yet measured. Words are chosen to test him, to see if he will bend or break. The knight responds with honesty. Throughout episode 5, we also see flashbacks and subtle reminders of his past that reinforce his worldview. Memories of past mentors, past vows, and past failures occasionally surface, reminding us why he clings so tightly to his moral code. These glimpses are not overt exposition. They are integrated seamlessly into his actions and reactions. When he hesitates before making a choice, or when he speaks gently to a subordinate, we understand that every decision is informed by history and experience. This layering adds depth to his character, making him feel real rather than idealized. He is not simply good or brave. He is a complex man navigating impossible choices in a world that rarely rewards either. The episode also explores his emotional vulnerability. Though he is composed in public, private moments reveal doubt and fear. He wrestles with questions that have no easy answers. Is staying true to honor worth risking his life? Can he protect those who rely on him without betraying his own code? These questions are not spoken aloud, but they are shown in his body language, in his glances, and in the silent moments between dialogue. The audience feels the tension as though it is their own. The writers use these moments to humanize him, to show that even the strongest knight can struggle with uncertainty and inner conflict. By the end of episode 5, the central knight emerges as a figure both heroic and tragically vulnerable. His decisions in this episode begin to define the trajectory of his story arc for the rest of the season. While others bend, scheme, or hide behind manipulation, he stands firm, refusing to compromise. Yet the world around him grows increasingly hostile. This juxtaposition creates dramatic tension. We admire his integrity, but we fear for his safety. Episode 5 does not provide answers or resolution for him. It poses questions, raises stakes, and deepens our understanding of what it truly means to be a knight in Westeros. The audience comes away not just witnessing his choices, but feeling the gravity of each one, understanding that every moment of courage carries weight, and that in this world, even the noblest hearts may be tested beyond endurance. The duel in Episode 5 is the centerpiece of the story, but it is not just about swords clashing or skill on the battlefield. It is a confrontation that reveals character, tests resolve, and shifts alliances. From the moment it begins, the episode slows the pace, allowing tension to build with every step. The knights face each other not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Every movement is deliberate, every glance carries unspoken meaning, and the weight of honor hangs over them like a shadow. This scene shows that in Westeros, combat is more than a fight. It is a statement, a test of integrity, and a reflection of the values each knight carries. Before the duel begins, the episode carefully sets the stage. The environment is meticulously chosen, a secluded courtyard with high walls, muted light, and distant observers who hold their breath. The silence around the combatants amplifies every footstep, every swing of the sword, and every measured breath. This is not a spectacle for entertainment, it is a trial. The cinematography emphasizes close-ups of faces, eyes, and hands, showing the audience the subtle tension and the anticipation in each knight's movements. The duel is framed as both intimate and monumental, illustrating that a single confrontation can have consequences far beyond the immediate moment. The first exchange is cautious, almost tentative. Each knight tests the other, feeling for weakness, gauging skill, and measuring reaction. There is a rhythm to the combat, like a conversation spoken in steel. The central knight moves deliberately, balancing aggression with restraint. He does not attack recklessly, he strikes with purpose, showing that his fighting is guided by strategy and morality rather than anger. Every parry and thrust is an expression of his character, controlled, precise, and principled. The audience senses that this duel is as much about proving moral strength as physical ability. The opponent, on the other hand, demonstrates ambition and cunning, striking with unpredictability, testing not just the knight's skill, but his patience and judgment. The contrast between the two fighters highlights a key theme: honor versus expediency. Dialogue during the duel, sparse as it is, carries enormous weight. Each line spoken, each taunt or challenge is carefully layered with meaning. Words that appear casual or superficial are actually loaded with threats, warnings, or tests of loyalty. The central knight responds with measured calm, never allowing himself to be baited. This restraint is crucial. It shows his discipline and his ability to maintain focus under extreme pressure. The duel becomes a psychological battle as much as a physical one. The audience begins to understand that mastery in Westeros is not defined solely by swordsmanship, but by control over emotions and decisions. Every swing reflects intention. Every dodge reflects thought, and every reaction exposes character. As the duel intensifies, the stakes become clear. This confrontation is not simply about winning a fight. It represents personal honor, political leverage, and the perception of all who watch. A misstep could lead to humiliation, loss of influence, or even death. Episode 5 captures the tension by alternating close-ups of the fighters' faces with wider shots showing the reactions of bystanders, whose fear, admiration, or suspicion adds to the gravity of the moment. Small details, such as a bead of sweat on a brow, a tightened jaw, or a sudden shift in footing, signal the immense pressure each combatant faces. The choreography is deliberate, emphasizing that every choice matters and that each strike carries both immediate and long-term consequences. The duel concludes not with a clear victor in the traditional sense, but with a shift in perception. Even as one knight emerges physically unscathed, the outcome leaves an impact far beyond the courtyard. Relationships are altered, loyalties are tested, and the audience realizes that true victory is about more than skill. It is about standing firm in one's principles. The aftermath demonstrates that in Westeros, battles are rarely contained to a single moment. They echo, affecting strategy, alliances, and personal integrity. Episode 5 uses this duel to remind viewers that courage, honor, and intelligence are inseparable in a world where survival depends on more than brute strength. Episode 5 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is layered with subtle details that reward careful viewers, and many of these moments hint at history, foreshadow future events, or deepen our understanding of the world. Unlike larger battle sequences or dramatic confrontations, these hidden touches often go unnoticed on a first watch, but they are critical for anyone wanting to understand the full scope of the story, from small props to brief lines of dialogue. Every detail has a purpose. The episode uses these elements to enrich the narrative and to remind the audience that in Westeros, the smallest actions can carry enormous weight. One of the clearest examples of hidden detail is the handling of historical artifacts and symbols. Throughout the episode, banners, armor, and even the arrangement of weapons reflect loyalties, past victories, or personal pride. A knight adjusting his sigil, or a lord handling an old sword is not merely visual flavor. It is a nod to history and legacy. These objects serve as silent storytellers, reminding viewers that every character is part of a lineage and that the weight of family and tradition guides many decisions. often more than the present circumstances. The careful framing of these items suggests that nothing in the scene is incidental, encouraging the audience to pay attention to visual cues. Dialogue is another area packed with hidden meaning. Lines that may seem casual or throwaway often carry multiple layers. A character referencing an old battle or an obscure prophecy can have significant implications for later episodes. In this installment, one brief comment about a past knight's failure or success subtly foreshadows the choices our central knight will face. These moments are often delivered with an understated tone, but the timing and placement are deliberate, designed to reward viewers who notice them. They also enrich the episode's thematic core, showing how history and precedent influence present actions. Character interactions in Episode 5 are full of subtlety that speaks volumes. A glance exchanged between two lords, a hand resting lightly on a sword hilt, or a slight hesitation before speaking can reveal intentions, alliances, or rivalries without any explicit statement. These understated moments emphasize the constant tension in Westeros, where unspoken power plays are often more decisive than open declarations. The central knight, in particular, is positioned to notice these nuances, reinforcing his role as both observer and participant. His reactions to these subtle cues provide insight into his growing understanding of the political landscape and highlight his strategic thinking beyond the battlefield. Easter eggs from the broader lore of Westeros are sprinkled throughout the episode, giving fans familiar with Duncan Egg stories and older histories small moments of recognition. A reference to a famous duel, a line lifted from older texts, or even a minor character's appearance ties the episode into a larger world. These elements are never forced. They are seamlessly integrated into the story, creating a richer experience. For viewers who pay close attention, they also serve to underscore the continuity of the series universe, reminding audiences that every character, no matter how minor, exists within a network of history, legend, and consequence.